Cavalryman of the Lost Cause. A Biography of Jeb Stuart. By Jeffry D. Wert. Narrated by Michael Prichard. Copyright 2008 by Jeffry D. Wert. This unabridged audiobook is published by arrangement with Jeffry D. Wert and the Trident Media Group, LLC, and was produced in the year 2008 by Tantor Media, Incorporated, which holds the copyright thereto. Chapter 1. Son of Virginia. Rumors hung over the camps of Confederate cavalrymen on June 24th, 1863. Throughout the day, their regiments had gathered, riding toward the village of Salem in the Virginia Piedmont. Officers had ordered them to unsaddle their horses for the first time in 10 days and to rest. But as one of them informed his family in a letter, "It is the opinion of a good many that we will cross the Potomac in a few days." To the west, across the Blue Ridge Mountains, strings of Southern infantry, artillery, and wagons filled the roads in the Shenandoah Valley, angling toward the Potomac River and Maryland. Farther north, the vanguard of General Robert E. Lee's Army of Northern Virginia was spreading across southern Pennsylvania, heralding a major Confederate thrust into the Keystone State. A pair of cavalry brigades sealed the gaps of the Blue Ridge, protecting the final elements of Lee's army as they marched north through the valley. At Salem, meanwhile, the cavalrymen, numbering nearly 5,500 in 3 brigades, rested and awaited orders. As many of them had speculated, their halt at Salem was to be brief. They had been brought together by their commander, Major General James Ewell Brown, Jeb Stuart. Lee had issued orders to Stuart to join the army in Pennsylvania, either by passing around the Union Army of the Potomac or by following Lee's infantry and artillery units on their march through the Shenandoah Valley toward Pennsylvania. If Stuart chose to move east and around the Federals, Lee cautioned him only to do so without hindrance. The instructions were vague and discretionary, but given to an officer Lee trusted. At 30 years of age, Stuart was the youngest of Lee's senior officers. Devoted to the cause of Southern independence, Stuart was one of the Confederacy's most renowned soldiers. He relished the pageantry of warfare, carefully crafting and guarding his reputation. His and his men's exploits had inspired Southerners and buttressed their morale. Beneath the veneer of a cavalier's trappings of a plumed hat and gold-braided uniform was a gifted cavalryman with the soul of a warrior. He had organized his command, drilled horses and men regularly, enforced discipline, and led them with unquestioned personal courage. Under Stuart's leadership, the Confederate horsemen had dominated mounted operations in the East for 2 years. They had fought with skill and elan. Recently, however, Union cavalrymen had carried the fight to the Southerners, meeting them saber to saber. After the Yankees attacked Stuart's men at Brandy Station on June 9th, igniting a day-long engagement, Southern newspapers editorialized that Stuart had been surprised and nearly defeated. He knew of the criticism and believed it to be unjust. Now, as he rode toward Salem to join his command, an opportunity lay ahead of him, not to the west, but to the east. Not long into the morning of June 25th, shielded by the night, Stuart led his veteran troopers on a road familiar not for its landmarks, but for where it led. Within hours he would face a fateful decision. The course he chose shaped events in a campaign that climaxed at Gettysburg. His choice has become central to history's judgment of him as a man and as a soldier. James Ewell Brown Stuart was born at Laurel Hill, Patrick County, Virginia, at 11:30 p.m., Wednesday, February 6, 1833, the fourth son and eighth child of Archibald and Elizabeth Pennell Stuart. The parents named their new son for Judge James Ewell Brown, the husband of Archibald's sister, Anne Dabney Stuart Brown. Family members and childhood friends called the boy James, Jim, or Jimmy. The Stuarts were Scotch-Irish and had lived in Virginia for nearly a century at the time of James's birth. His great-great-grandfather and his father's namesake, Archibald Stuart, had emigrated from Londonderry to Pennsylvania in 1726. A Presbyterian, Archibald had helped in fomenting a rebellion against authorities who were persecuting members of the church. Charged with treason, he left his wife Janet and 2 children and fled to America. Janet and the children joined him several years later, and in 1738 the family settled in Augusta County, Virginia. The couple had 2 more children, including a second son, Alexander, born in 1733 or 1734. Alexander Stuart, James's great-grandfather, lived his entire life in the Shenandoah Valley of Virginia. During the American Revolution, Stuart served as a major in a militia regiment, commanded by Colonel Samuel McDowell. At Guilford Courthouse, North Carolina, on March 15, 1781, Stuart led the regiment in the fighting, fell wounded, and was captured. Released after 6 months in captivity, he returned to Augusta County in the Valley. Major Stuart was married 3 times, widowed twice. His second wife, Mary Moore Paxton, bore him a son and namesake, Alexander, born on May 11, 1770. According to a letter written by Flora Cook Stuart, James's future wife, it was this 3rd generation of Stuarts in America who changed the spelling of their surname from Stewart to Stuart. Her statement has not been verified by other accounts. The second Alexander Stuart, James's grandfather, had a distinguished career in the law and politics as a federal and state jurist in Illinois and Missouri. Like his father, Judge Stuart was widowed twice and had 3 wives. His first wife was Nancy Ann Dabney, whose kinfolk included Thomas Jefferson, John Marshall, and the Lee family. Alexander and Nancy had 2 children, Archibald, born December 2, 1795, and Anne Dabney, born in 1798. Nancy Stuart probably died from complications in the birth of her daughter, a common occurrence in that era, as Alexander remarried in June 1800. While on a visit to Virginia, he died in Staunton on December 9, 1832, less than 2 months before the birth of his famous grandson. It would appear that the judge's 2 children remained in Virginia with a stepmother or relatives when he moved to the West. Archibald Stuart, James's father, followed his father in the legal profession and politics. After serving in an artillery unit in the War of 1812, Archibald studied law and opened a practice in Campbell County. Described by local folks as a hell of a fellow, Arch, as he was known, enjoyed the conviviality of company and alcoholic drink. Gifted with a ringing voice, he regaled listeners with rousing tales and songs. His personality drew people to him, and in 1819 the citizens of Campbell County elected him to the House of Delegates. It was only the beginning of a career that combined law and politics for Arch Stuart. By the time Arch Stuart served in the state legislature, he was married with 2 daughters. He had met and courted Elizabeth Letcher Pannell of Pittsylvania County. They were married on June 17, 1817, and lived on the family farm outside Lynchburg. Like her husband's family, Elizabeth's had been in Virginia decades before the American Revolution. Her maternal grandparents, William and Elizabeth Letcher, settled in southwestern Henry County, present-day Patrick County, on the Virginia-North Carolina boundary in 1778. It was at their new home where Elizabeth Stuart's mother, Bithynia Letcher, was born on March 21, 1780. During the Revolution, the region along the Virginia-North Carolina border was bitterly divided between patriots and loyalists. William Letcher enlisted in a local militia company that supported independence. On August 2, 1780, a loyalist shot and killed him, an act that enraged Letcher's fellow patriots and resulted in a mass hanging of local Tories. 5 months later, his widow married George Hairston, and together they had 12 children. Bithynia Letcher grew to adulthood in the Hairston household. When Hairston died in 1827, he was one of Virginia's wealthiest men, owning plantations in the state and in Mississippi. Bithynia Letcher was 18 years old when she married David Pannell. His family had settled along the Rappahannock and Rapidan rivers in central Virginia. More than a year later, on January 4, 1801, Bithynia gave birth to Elizabeth. A son, William, followed 2 years later. David Pannell died in November 1803, and at some later time Bithynia and her children were living in Pittsylvania County, just south of Campbell County. When Archibald Stuart and Elizabeth Letcher Pannell married, a vast network of relatives became intertwined because of second and third marriages. This extended family of uncles, aunts, and cousins would be important in the life of their son James. The wedding of Archibald Stuart and Elizabeth Pannell united two disparate individuals. While he was described as charming and witty, the center of attraction at every social gathering, she was reserved, religiously pious, a woman of no special patience with nonsense. When they moved finally to Patrick County, she attended regularly Episcopal services in the Methodist Episcopal Church in Mount Airy, North Carolina, a few miles south of their home. She instilled devotion to the church into her children. Their marriage underwent difficult times, and their relationship became strained. Archibald's law practice and political career prospered throughout their years together. A powerful orator and advocate, according to one account, he charmed the multitude on the hustings and convinced juries and courts. He was a delegate to the Virginia Constitutional Conventions in 1829 and 1850, was a Commonwealth attorney for Floyd County, and served terms as a Democrat in the United States House of Representatives and in the Virginia Senate. He built a home, provided for a wife and 10 children, and owned slaves. He was, however, a spendthrift, amassing debts that plagued the family even after his death. The sources of his financial difficulties have been attributed to his lack of business acumen, indulgent spending, and a gambling habit. While he appears to have been an able and respected lawyer, the legal field did not ensure monetary reward during this era. A fellow Virginia attorney stated that the profession was not always, and in fact not generally, the road to wealth. The practice of law is one of the most uncertain and precarious of all pursuits. If Archibald gambled frequently, he only worsened the family's financial straits. At one point he admitted in a letter, "I know I have been improvident and wasteful to a criminal extent, but if I know myself, I can safely say I shall be so no more. I have been punished sufficiently by the horrors of being in debt to teach me caution in future. You will probably say that I have made these resolutions before, and they have not been followed up." It was a pledge he could not keep. In 1828, Archibald Stuart apparently traded the farm in Campbell County that he had received from his father to his brother-in-law, William Pannell. In turn, Pannell gave his share of the land in Patrick County given to him and Elizabeth Stuart by their mother. Part of the acreage came from the grandparent Letcher's original claim. The Stuarts' land holdings amounted to about 1,500.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?